This is Ons Up. I'm Peter.
I'm Animesh.
And it's time to activate Ken mode again. Joining us for the second time on the podcast is Jesse Matthewson. Welcome back to the podcast, Jesse. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm alive. Barely. Teetering on the was just discussing before you joined us that I got my fourth COVID shot today, and I'm starting to feel a little crazy. It's starting to take hold, and I'm starting to lose a little.
This could be a good disclaimer.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, a good disclaimer to start off the podcast with. But
this could be a weird one.
but before you said that, right, I was thinking that it also could be a reason for you, like after a while, being unleashed into the wild and playing shows, because you guys recently did a short run of shows with Mares of Trace and also Wild Creature.
Yeah. The first ones in 3 years.
So what was that like?
They were like really good shows. I heard from some of the promoters that generally speaking, at least in some of the northern, like Canadian provinces and some of the spots in the States are experiencing like 20% reductions in crowds. But overall, I think we actually had better crowds than we have the previous album cycle. So if we're like net doing a little better and yet it's still down, like I think we're trending upward, which is, I mean, I'll take it. Not a bad start for this album cycle. It seems as though with this one, people, I think that it's strumming a chord with people a little more than a lot of our albums have before. Just simply from like paying attention to the lyrics and the feelings in the songs. A lot of people are really expressing that, this is how I've been feeling the last 3 years.
Yeah. And well, while I'm laughing about that, there's going to be an entire segment I think we'll need to do, because I think that's one of the biggest talking points or biggest things I wanted to get into this conversation with you, right? Just like the lyrics and the entire album in there. I think we'll definitely do that. But before we jump into that section, I want to talk to you about the live aspect again, right? Because I'm not sure, because I was reading up a bunch of websites before prepping for this. And one of the websites, I think, quotes you or actually states that some of your older material was actually tweaked to be performed with your now official member, which is Catherine Kerr, and who's the saxophonist and a multi-instrumentalist. So is that correct, what I read? And how did that kind of work out in the jam room prior to performing live?
Well, given that she played saxophone on 3 tracks from our Loved record and played saxophone on a bunch of the new material, and I had her play piano on several songs and some synth, and I played some of the other synth on other tracks on the new 2 albums that we made. But we figured we'd teach her how to do all the different synth things live. And if we're going to be like, we can't be one of those bands that just abandons our old material, because I don't know, that pisses everyone off when bands does that. And we've been around for 23 years now, so you can't just turn your back on where you've come from. So we decided to try and incorporate specifically synthesizer and saxophone into a bunch of our older tracks, just so we can kind of round it out and have it so she's not just standing there doing nothing while we're playing like 3/4 of the old material. So yeah, we spent a few months just working through which old songs would fit new parts and how to go about doing that tastefully without it just seeming like, oh yeah, they just kind of smashed some saxophone over top of that. That was dumb.
Okay.
I think we did a pretty good job. The reaction so far from a lot of people that have seen us like many, many times, because we only played Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Calgary, and Edmonton in Canada. And a bunch of our friends that have seen us countless times over 20 years said this is the best that we've ever been live. So those are probably pretty good words.
Yeah. This is a question I can only ask you because your expertise in this field will actually be able to answer this. What is the cost of adding a 4th member for And how does that impact your bookings and the economics of touring?
That'll be an interesting one to answer once we've been through more dates. But like, strictly speaking, we have a little bit more gear to carry. We have another mouth to feed. In terms of booking, like hotels, we're not booking anymore, so we're all cramming into one little space. It will definitely be more expensive when it comes time to us actually like flying to, say, doing European dates. I mean, we can't count out doing dates elsewhere in the world, but we haven't done a lot other than Europe to date. But I mean, we're always open. But yeah, flights, I know we're getting some festival offers for next year in Europe, and even just thinking about the offers where it's like, now we have a whole other plane ticket we have to pay for. Like, ugh, it hurts, but like, if we all want to do the thing, we're going to make it work, right? Otherwise, just stay home.
True.
Boring.
True. Alrighty. So since we are still talking live, how was it performing Null for the first time live? Was it a cathartic experience?
Yeah, I think so. I actually liked playing those songs more than the old songs live.
Says every musician with new music ever.
Yeah. And they feel obviously more relevant, and we wrote those ones as a 4-piece. So they were more fun to play in that respect, where it's like, this is the way this is meant to be heard. So, yeah, just, I don't know. It gave us a little bit more space. A lot of our older material is just so tense all the time. And so much of the live show was all about tension. And I don't want to feel that tension anymore. I'm too old for that tension.
You're
hurts.
saying that after releasing an album like Null?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was me all expressing my discomfort with the tension. I'm trying to get that out of my body.
Okay. Okay, cool. So,
but fair enough. I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, like, I have to kind of add, right? Because there's two aspects to this album, right? One aspect is you screaming into the mic all of these lyrics, and then there's another where someone who kind of actually feels it is also singing it back. Did that actually happen? Because you said that at least some of the people, at least so far, kind of the music resonated with.
Yeah, I mean, we've even at some of the shows had kids who've already memorized all the lyrics and were screaming them back at my face, which was
great.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of all part of the process, right? Me trying to get it out, and I obviously, I mean, I can only really recount my own experience through the last, like, coming on 3 years, and it's both gives you a sense of community that others were feeling it too, but at the same time, I feel very bad for everyone else that they went through something similar, if they went through something similar, because obviously, like, the content of these lyrics doesn't sound like a very happy person, does it?
No, not at all. All right. You're in a very interesting spot because it's been a handful of times since the release of Null. You've gone out and you've played these songs to a crowd. And I don't know, do you still read album reviews? Because there's been a whole bunch of literature that's been penned down about this album too. What do you make of the response to the album so far from both the live setting, where you'll have people coming up to you and talking to you about it, as well as the album reviews thing where, yeah, people's opinions?
I mean, I have to try to focus more on the live reviews than I do maybe the ones that are out there in the internet. I historically have made a point of reading almost every review, and I made a conscious decision to stop that on this cycle. Particularly after I read a scathing review that was very much projecting some of their own insecurities and, I think, problems with their own life onto our album that couldn't have been more far off the mark. But I think the last 3 years have made it's so there's a degree of fragility within me that I don't think was maybe there prior to the pandemic, and I just I can't take on other people's baggage when it has to do with my art. So I'm getting people to pre-screen reviews at this point where
Wow.
well, like with our label, like they'll send along a good one, but I'm not going to go out of my way to read people tearing us apart when they don't even know us. Which I don't have delusions that we're like this big band that needs to be insulated, but for my own mental health, I can't go digging the way I used to, because if you dig up just that certain type of miserable bastard that just wants to take out their failures on you, I'm not going to go out of my way to take that and put it on myself anymore. Because I had one where I had a particularly awful couple weeks, and I read this one scathing review, and it just sunk my battleship. And I don't need that in my life.
Damn, I feel for you, but I mean, at the end of the day, reviews are just opinions, no?
Yeah, but there's a certain type of reviewer, and it's funny because I end up remembering these for the rest of my life. There are certain reviewers who they don't review the art. They try to take the platform of a review to do a teardown of your life and make assumptions about the artist themselves. And it's those types that I don't need to have. I don't need to come across shit like that.
Yeah.
With people who don't know me at all, I don't need that in my life. And like, I'm obviously not saying this is all reviewers, because it's far from the truth. But I'm sure you two have read reviews by people where you're like, what the hell was their problem? Like, they didn't even review the art. That was just fucked up.
Yeah.
And
well, my band has been subject to it too. So
I mean, I'm sure Animesh kind of connects with it on a different level. But I mean, like, can I be honest here, right? That the internet has been like a downer when it comes to stuff like that, right? Today, anyone like back in the day, it was the message board bros and whatever you want to call them, right? But today, it's your Tumblr, your anyone. I mean, I'll be honest, sometimes I'm watching YouTube reactions and I'm just like, are you for real? Or, I mean, I have to bring this up, right? Because there was a really famous, and I'm not going to name them, everyone kind of knows them, but these really huge reaction channel on YouTube, right? And they're doing a breakdown of a song, but they're in America and it's of a UK-based artist. So they do not get any of the cultural references that are being made in the lyrics, right? And it's like a lot of very nuanced stuff because it was a hip hop artist. And I was watching this, and literally the first comment is, guys, this guy did a better takedown. You guys don't get it. And I think that is another aspect of the internet, right? Where sometimes earlier it was just one way. Now people just comment. Like, YouTube commenters are savage. Like, they do not give a fuck. And they're still anonymous like the message board guys. So you have a lot of that happening, right? It's like, I want to do it just because, but you will not actually try to understand or go into the lyrics or try to, I don't know, be objective to a certain way. I think that objectivity is lost, I feel. Do you agree?
Yeah, very much so. And I also think anything but an extreme reaction isn't worth anything when you're looking for clicks either. So you either absolutely unabashedly love something, or you just, these are all the reasons this is the worst thing I've ever heard, and these are the worst people I've ever come across, and I want you to click to find out. And I don't know, especially with stuff like music, where like the nature of consumption has shifted to, clearly streaming is the number one, and it is so easy to have access to anything. I mean, I get why there are still reviewers, but I find them less relevant now than ever before. Like, honestly, for my own consumption, I generally just want to be made aware of things, and then I want to listen to them and make up my own damn mind. And it's almost having platforms that are willing to sift through PR scribes to basically republish them, and you can have your trust in that sort of thing, because that's honestly how I get most of my music alerts, shy of like some of the algorithmic nuances in things like Spotify. But for the most part, like that's still passive listening, and I'd rather be seeking out newer material that has a little bit maybe parameters that engage your brain a little bit more, if that makes sense. Because I still do read some music blogs for the sake of like that first single pitch, and if it sounds interesting, I will check it out. Which I guess in the end is all like album reviewers are supposed to be doing, but like when an album's out, just go fucking listen to it. Right?
Yeah. This is, I mean, I think this deserves a discussion unto itself. What is the role of a reviewer in today's time and age? And let's park that thought at the moment for this particular chat with you. Should be about Null and getting into that. So let's set that tone right away. Let's pick a song to play for our audience. Which song should it be from Null?
Oh, we got to start with the first. You got to go with the first, the love letter.
Superb. Here it is.
this is audio, so no one could see my smile when you mentioned a love letter. But I talked about the lyrics, right? And I think there are a lot of pieces in the album that kind of struck me. And I think it all starts off with a love letter, right? Because let's be honest, it's not really a love letter in the traditional sense that you go for, right?
It depends on
no.
which relationship you are talking about.
Or which stage. But I mean, like, I think it's ballsy, and you know that it kind of sets the tone for the album when the track ends with something is broken, something is fucked repeatedly, right? And there's also another line which I'm going to talk, which is on the end of the album, right? Which is unresponsive, where
Mhm.
you can literally, again, the line goes, I'm unraveling so much faster than I used to, like a distant blanketed lightning for the impending storm. I mean, that had a fucking great video also to kind of go with it, because it kind of, you actually feel that, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the best uses I've seen in a metal video, unlike just like, show four guys in a basement kind of
Yeah.
in there. But let let's unwrap or unravel a love letter. Tell us about that track.
A love letter was largely a collection of some of the meaner things that could be said that have not been said. I grabbed a lot of those lines. I'm sure I talked about this with you guys the last time we talked, where we keep a list of phrases and mean things that people say to each other just as a band that they'll send to me to collect them. And I have this gigantic iPhone message that has all these statements on it. There was a couple of the lines from this song were from that list that I then patched together with some of my own inner workings. And that ended up being the lyrics for this song. And I mostly thought calling it a love letter was funny.
It is.
Initially, the song I was going to call it a love letter in 3 parts, because this song probably got rewritten 6 times. It was one of the first songs I started to write when the lockdowns had begun, and I was teaching myself how to record music on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
So it kept going through new iterations, because it's like, yeah, that sounds okay, but it sounds like a shitty Inter Arma mixed with the Melvins. Let's spice that up. Let's change this. All right, that sounds okay, but now this kind of, I don't know, I'm not really feeling the energy on that. Let's add this little part. And it kept evolving, especially as I got my brother to start actually playing drums, because when I first put this thing together, he didn't play on any of it. I was programming MIDI drums, so he definitely added a new element to that too, just playing these parts out on a real kit and adding a real drummer's flair. But yeah, the statements themselves, I think some of the more poignant ones, like the the first line of the album was literally something, I think she was like 70 or 80 years old. A client of my mother's said that to her, and I overheard it, and I thought that line was just too perfect. I don't feel bad for insufferable people. Who talks like that?
Oh, wow. I'm going to let that sink in for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I've always looked at Ken Mode to have really good, memorable lyrics, and I think you've outdone yourself on Null, because the entire album has so many quotable lines as such. Because and overall, the lyrics as such are such a huge high point for me, because it seemed like it seemed like it reached a point where the music is just a vehicle to carry the words, and that's usually not an approach that's heard in most of the music, at least I listen to. I'm guessing Peter as well.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of heavy metal, that's kind of feels like the case too, right?
Yeah.
Which it is funny because all these songs were written with the music in mind first.
But that's okay. Let's dig deeper into that, and it's great that you say that. To me, it felt that okay, even though music was written before the lyrics came in, it seemed as if it was more stripped down so that the vocals could shine. Just the way the mixing is done, just the way there's more of a vocal boost that I hear on this album than your previous releases.
With that I'll tie this all together here. So the approach, there's a bunch of different factors that go into why I feel like the vocals maybe stick out more on this record. Starting with the way I wrote them, the last bunch of albums, I feel like I've acted more, I mean, partial writer, partial editor. A lot of the time I'd be pulling lines from multiple different pieces of writing that either I did or that my bandmates had done, and I was editing them together to make a cohesive piece that I felt read a certain way, and then I'd fit it to music. With a lot of this material, that approach just didn't feel raw and honest enough to me. So with several of these works, I quite literally just sat down with my little notebook and wrote out basic prose, and that would end up being the song. And I think because of that more stream of conscious style writing, it brought out a certain honesty behind the feeling in that moment. It's not a splintered feeling like maybe some of the past works have been. And I think I also kind of stripped away some of the relative pretense of some of the writing too. I didn't want super verbose lines because it just, when you're trying to access that sense of desperation, you're not going to be saying 15 words per sentence. You're going to be screaming a couple, and you're going to be, your voice is going to be breaking while it happens. So coupling a different approach to actually writing the lyrics, the actual execution of them, as I was mentioning earlier, I blew my voice out before I went into the studio. So I tried recording one or two songs with Andrew Schneider in the studio itself, and my voice was just shot. So we made a backup plan for how I was going to actually get these done. And like I've set up a little bit of a tiny demo home studio here, and that's how I wrote a lot of at least the majority of the material on Null was written in this room. And then a lot of the material that we recorded on the album that's going to come out next year, that was considerably more collaborative as like the pandemic started to open up and we were actually able to get in the same room together. But so I digress. Recording the vocals, I buy a little bit better preamp, but I recorded all the vocals for all of these in my home. So as a result, I was able to approach them with a level of detail that I've never been able to in the past. Like normally recording vocals in a studio, you're going to try and cram as many songs in as short an amount of time as you can just to get it done. But because I had basically all the time in the world, I was trying to keep ahead of our mixing schedule, but I could take like 3 sessions for one song. So I recorded them very deliberately and was able to do a lot of different backing tracks, and like you'll note some of the detail in some of these songs where there are several voices of mine mixed together. And I was able to do all my own vocal comping that usually you pay big studios big money to do all that stuff for you. But since it was just me, I got to really micromanage the process. And I'm really glad I did, because I think it's the best my voice has ever sounded. And
True.
It definitely drives home a different element of intensity to all of these songs.
Okay, so while we're talking production as such, I have to say Null was one of the few records where I didn't, or rather, actually not didn't. I couldn't go back to listening to it on headphones because it sounds great on speakers. It sounded great even in the car during my commutes. I heard it once on headphones and I ended up feeling really suffocated, tensed up, and absolutely drained. Was that the intent? It's a tough listen on headphones. All that detail, all the scratch, all the noise, all the ambience.
It's probably because it's probably a lot of the synthesizer that's on that, because we use it in a very claustrophobic manner. And I could see a lot of those sounds just sounding like your head is caving in on itself if you're listening on headphones. That's funny.
So for those who haven't heard the album as yet, just a warning.
Yeah. It's not a good time on headphones.
Or even if you use, and just adding to that warning, if you're using headphones, volume lower than usual.
Yeah. Some of it gets a little dense. It's fun having Catherine make all those sounds live too. When you're testing the synth patches. Oh, that's right. That's perfect.
Sound check is certainly not a lot of fun sometimes. I guess.
Oh, even just on these shows, the looks she gets when we're doing, because we'll frequently do a love letter for the sound check too. And she has to warm up her sax chops before diving in like that. And the sound that I told her I wanted her to accomplish was the sound of a dying. You first hear the saxophone in that song.
Let's talk a little bit more about Catherine and her capabilities and the huge sonic canvas it opens up, right? Did you guys have to change your sonic dynamics to make enough room for her? I mean,
yes, very much so.
Talk to us about how it went down, not just from a writing perspective, but also from a recording, mixing, mastering kind of a perspective, especially with an entire body of work like Null, not just a couple of songs or 3 songs earlier.
Yeah, that was actually the fact that she was both interested and into being a part of the band as a live musician, along with obviously a writing position, but due to the nature of the way these albums came together, largely being during the pandemic, I did a lot of the synth and piano writing on my own, because it was me in this room, right? So she's, as a player, allowing us to actually execute this vision live, which is something that has always been a problem for us when we're trying to incorporate other instruments. Which is why usually, we've flirted these types of ideas before, but I feel like we never quite hit the mark. And it's because we write the songs as a 3-piece, and then I try to fit ideas in when we're recording it properly in the studio. And of course, it's not going to hit the mark because you've already filled up the space with guitar, bass, and drums and vocals. So I wanted to go about approaching this differently with this material, where I was literally constructing each part of each song riff by riff, like layer by layer. So I was able to cull out a spot, like this is where the guitar is going to fit, this is where the bass is going to fit, and this is where synth is going to fit, and then the vocals are going to be up here, kind of idea. So when it came to actually recording it with Andrew, I already had all these ideas in my head and demos that I made, that this is the sonic space this is going to fill. And then Andrew, being the professional that he is, made it sound better. And now that we're doing all this live, we kind of had to go through the process all over again, just to make sure that the sounds that we had are fitting the way they're meant to as they did on the album, which it definitely took us some time to cull out that space, specifically like lining up all the amps and making sure everything was balanced properly. And I had to invest in some extra gear because I need my guitar to spread a certain way now, and all this stuff is very expensive. Shouldn't have made these changes.
Well, at least for us, the listeners, we're enjoying it. So I think it works out in the end.
And that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But you've mentioned this a couple of times. That's why I want to nerd out a bit more on this, right? Is you've talked about the demo room that you've set up, learning a digital audio workstation, Reaper. Is that a process that you enjoyed and something that you see continuing for future releases?
Oh, 100%.
Maybe the easier part to answer is what's harder to learn, right? Digital recording or Muay Thai?
Muay Thai. Not that I'd consider myself a master in either, but I feel like with Muay Thai, as a not very coordinated white guy who took it up at 25 years of age, it took me way too long to get even remotely good at that. And with my journey through Reaper, I actually caught on very quickly. So, and that's a very good time for anyone. I probably never would have made time to teach myself how to use any of this. And I am definitely better off in the long run having learned how to. This has completely changed our songwriting abilities, and I fully intend to utilize these tools going forward for the rest of my music making days. So if there is any silver lining to be seen with any of this, the fact that I was able to accomplish this, I think is very, very cool. And I'm very thankful that I had the access to it and that I was able to conjure up the drive to do it too.
Do you think it'll end up making you more of a perfectionist?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So will that translate into longer gaps between albums? I mean, not the immediate next one because we know that's already done, but eventually.
Theoretically, no. Simply because we're ahead of the 8 ball right now, right?
Yeah.
So we have a record that's going to come out next year, and like as soon as we are done this tour in November, I would like to get back on this laptop and start writing some material. So ideally, we might be able to get another album in the can earlier than anyone would expect. But I mean, we do have to get writing again. That is the unfortunate nature of being a control freak, is that I get so involved in the marketing of an album too, that I have not had any time to do any writing on my own this year at all, which is starting to make me feel a little crazy.
And since you brought the word up, what's better to use, control freak or perfectionist?
I like to be self-deprecating, so I go with control.
But you know what? I have to give kudos to you because like we spoke to, I don't know, I lost count of the number of musicians we spoke to in 2020, 2021, right? And there were just two very distinct camps we realized. Like one camp which was, hey, you know what? We're gonna like make lemonade with these lemons that life has given us, like what you did. I mean, honestly, that's what I did, right? Like I ended up buying a podcast mic, which was not available for the longest time, by the way. Thanks to everyone starting a podcast in 2020. But there was another camp which said, you know what, fuck this. Like, this is too much. We'd rather just wait for studios to open. And they said, we want to like jam with our mates and, you know, make music that way. So it was very two distinct camps we realized. There's no like middle ground, I think, in something like that.
And I mean, there's obviously been many memes since we've been kind of slowly emerging from the pandemic, mocking all the artists who had these lofty goals and then didn't accomplish any of them too. And I mean, as I see all that, I can't help but feel thankful that I am not one of those, and that we did like we wrote and recorded 2 albums. So we're probably, especially for the type of music that we do, we're on that ridiculously what's the word I'm looking for here?
Overachiever?
Productive. Productive.
I was like overachieving.
that COVID shot brain that's starting to take effect here. Productive. Okay. That's not a hard word, man.
but hold that thought for a second, right? Because we want to play another song from Null. Which one do you think it should be, and why?
Let's go for number 2. Throw your phone in the river, because that's been a theme, a recurring theme that I'm sure everyone can relate to over the last couple years. Just everyone's over dependence on their smartphones, and just this society of hearing everyone's opinions about everything, no matter how worthless they are. It's just all create this level of tension that you can't cut with a knife, and it's just, I don't know, some days it's unbearable trying to deal with it.
Okay, here it is.
In one of your recent interviews, I read, and I'm going to quote you, I view touring as a way to pay for me to hang out with friends of mine all over the world while getting to eat fun things I can't eat at home. So let's be honest, what are you looking forward to on your US tour with Frail Body that's coming up in a couple of weeks?
Tacos.
Really?
Tacos. Yeah. Also Texas style Southern barbecue, which I haven't had in 7 years.
Wow.
Those are the big things. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds appetizing. Actually, it does. Damn. Tacos for breakfast is a good idea, no?
Yeah.
Breakfast tacos.
Breakfast tacos.
Breakfast burritos.
Oh, no, I didn't mean it in that way.
in the US, tacos are kind of the easy fallback pretty much anywhere you go, because generally speaking, you're going to find something probably pretty good, and it's also going to be pretty cheap. And no matter who you're with, no matter what they eat, they're going to be able to find something in tacos.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, I know there's the imitation or impossible meat and stuff like that, but I don't think that's the same when it comes to burgers, right? Tacos.
Yeah, The tacos, you can do so many things with tacos.
Yeah.
Oh, bless tacos.
Less tacos. Alrighty. Let's talk about the follow-up to Null. We first got to know about it the last time you were on the podcast when you said you were prepping for the recording with Andrew Schneider and mentioned that you had material ready for 2 albums. Some websites say the record is mastered, waiting to be unleashed. You've kind of alluded to that fact as well. Is it called Void? Is that the name you're going with?
Yeah.
And do you have a tentative release date?
Tentative release date we haven't completely locked down, but I will probably force it to happen next fall. Kind of a year, right? A complete calendar year after Null. Because I don't really want to stretch it out too much far after that, because at a certain point it's going to feel old to me. Because like you just said, that I've said, it was finished in January, much like Null was. So we submitted Null for manufacturing then, and that's why it came out in September. But Void's been, vinyl manufacturing is taking that long now. So we wanted to give.
So you're actually like getting it to people when it's ready, not like doing pre-orders and stuff like that. That's good.
I mean, we still did pre-orders because we launched that with the first single like 4 months before, which even that was maybe a little overkill, but we wanted to get that out before the summer hit, because people have a tendency to be a little bit less receptive to picking up on news items during the summer, because hopefully they're out having fun.
Whatever that is, right?
Whatever fun is. So yeah, I'd like, given that Null and Void were both done in January, I'd like to get that. So it's only a year gap, because if I had to sit on this thing for 2 years before anyone hears any of it, that would be a little bit of a bummer, because it's still very much, it's like the part 2 of the pandemic series, and at a certain point people aren't going to want to hear that anymore, right? But it's still fresh enough that like everyone will definitely feel something with this one, because with Null, it was very much a product of the time that it was written. It was largely put together in 2020, where it was almost like a frantic, crazed, angry reaction to everything that was happening. And then Void is like this acceptance and this general melancholy and great sense of disappointment in everyone and everything. So prepare to be bummed out even further.
No, the natural question to that is, why think of them as 2 separate albums? Why not double album, or part A and part B? Or is it supposed to be part A and part B?
Is this your use your illusion, basically?
We've definitely
okay, wait, I have to clarify that, right? Just in case anyone comes at me, I'm not meaning as a colossal, bloated, overproduced, overthought album. I don't mean from that way. I meant purely.
He now enjoys recording.
So now he's just gonna be putting out, like, imagine if you do a Buckethead. Oh my god, that would be insane.
We need dolphins.
But what I meant was
self-indulgent garbage.
But I meant, like, in terms of, if you look the way Guns N' Roses put that out, right? Like, there was that entire marketing hype done in that way, right? So just taking a leaf out of that, that's what I meant.
Exactly. Yeah.
We figured we're not a big enough band for anyone to give 2 shits about that kind of approach with. So we thought making it a double album was a commercial suicide, specifically because I like these songs. I like them a lot, and I know the band likes them a lot, and we want people to actually hear it. And I do know the sad truth of the way this industry is even when we put out an album, usually people are largely only going to listen to the first half of it at best. So if we put out a double album, we're probably looking at 25% of it only getting listened to. And that felt like a waste of the material to us. So we thought, given the nature of the songs and the variety that it all came together to be, it actually did separate into two distinct albums very, very well, despite being one whole that fit together to tell one story. So, yeah, we just figured that it'd be wiser to release it as two distinct ones, and then people can listen to Null, listen to Void, and then listen to them together and see how that makes them feel. There's an element of, I don't want to say luck that it worked well the way it panned out, but that's probably partially from its own design anyway, because the whole writing cycle, we were treating it as though it was going to be one record. So we didn't want to have any ideas repeating themselves. So you definitely get the sense that they're of the same base, but it's very much one long story that's kind of playing out.
Is it frustrating at all that you have this much material in the tank, or do you see it as we said earlier, or as we were talking earlier, as a huge
an ace up my sleeve?
Yeah, an ace up your sleeve.
Yeah, I think it especially in a time where it seems as though content is king, and that just sounds cliche and sleazy, but
I can't believe you said that in an interview.
Yeah. But to have the content, yet it's not contrived, therein is kind of the magic, because I do believe that there's a lot of bands out there that are simply putting out too much material all the time, and it makes it so they don't have a filter on it. This material, because of the nature of how it was written and recorded, we already went through the filtration process. Like, we probably wrote twice as much material, if not more, than what we ended up recording in the end product. So we've been, and I mean, that's just was a product of having a lot of time on our hands with all these goddamn lockdowns.
Okay, so
I love the conviction, because I have to, like, we know of so many bands who had material with them, but they choose not to talk about it so that they don't raise expectations or temper expectations or even set expectations. I love the fact that you're open and talking about this and giving us something to look forward to.
Yeah, although don't get me wrong, maybe you'll hate it.
For that, we'll set an appointment a year from now.
Yes.
But I have one burning question, considering you talked about just the way you made like the placement of Null and Void, right? And especially, I caught on what you said, that most people are going to listen to anyway 25% of the album. Is that why you stuck Lost Grip in the middle of Null?
Yeah.
Because I was like, why does someone put a 10-minute song in the middle of an album? Like,
I thought it was perfectly placed.
But
yeah,
because Not My Fault completely changes that the tonality. It brings in so much more relief, like in the middle, and then it sets you up perfectly for Lost Grip.
This was the only contention point within the band too when we were sequencing it, and we all acknowledged that if we put Lost Grip at the end of Null, it would have been like a very good sequence, and it would have provided this sense of almost relief when that last tom hit escapes, and like then the album, like the vinyl hits that little lock groove and starts clicking. But I knew no one would hear it, and I felt like it was potentially the strongest song on the whole album, and I wanted it to be heard. I also did just straight up feel like it made a good beginning to a side B. Like when you flip it over, that's the first thing you hear. It's just such an epic song.
So that's a sequencing you kept in mind, vinyl.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it has been for the last bunch of records, where we very much want to have something that grabs your attention when you start each side. Yeah, it is entertaining listening to it as a CD or as a digital release where there's all of a sudden this 10-minute song right in the middle. It's almost like a
Exactly. It's like, and especially like, I mean, if you're listening to it on like Spotify or stuff like that, then I mean, I'm glad I have the ad-free version for that, because that would really just fuck up my experience of listening to the album. It's
Hey,
like,
but he'll do anything for money, yo. Yeah,
yeah, that's a real upper of a song.
it is.
All right. I don't know. Have we talked everything? Because I
Pretty
still
much.
feel I still feel there's like so much more we can nerd out about. But is there any more wisdom you want to leave us with, Jesse?
I mean, for this one, so much of my emotion went into simply like making and recording. It's been interesting trying to talk about it after the fact, because it's consistently bringing up the darkest and worst moments of the last 2 years for myself, and I've had to focus on that for like the last 5 months, which in itself is a little draining. I have a little bit more fun nerding out on more of the technical aspects of it, which it's funny because a lot of interviews end up mostly just focusing on my emotional state, which can be exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can't even imagine doing like more than 2 or 3 of these chats a day. It's like, okay.
There was a period there before the album actually came out where I must have been doing like 3 interviews a day for a couple weeks, and I just wasn't keeping up on my work.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
I mean, I'm not complaining. It means people actually want to talk to us about it, which is pretty good. As a band that's 23 years into their career, most bands are just simply getting ignored. So we're not doing too bad here.
Not doing bad at all. Giving us, in fact, a lot to look forward to. Yeah. So let's call it a day, a night, because we're in 2 separate time zones for the moment.
Drastically.
I hope you get to eat a lot of tacos. I hope you get to eat a lot of Texas style barbecue. And I hope you have a really good tour.
Thank you, sir. And same time next year?
Done. Yep. You've got a plan. We have a plan.
Sounds good.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So
I'll let you know just how heavy I get on all that barbecue.
Tour diaries.
Yeah.
You guys should do it.
I think that the reason why Instagram was created was just that. Not to put up like clips of your music or recording. It's just the amount of food that you're eating. That's it.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll do like a TikTok/Instagram style Ken Mode Eats show. I know we did with our Success record. We actually did like a proper YouTube video log where we called it the Huge Success Food Blog, and that's all still up there. But we should revisit that, but for like the new era with these shorter videos. We'll do little clips of us just pigging out.
I'm trying to think of those with songs from Null as the thing, and in my head it just not computing. Oh well, let's see. Gents, ladies, everybody, check out Ken Mode's Null, kenmode.bandcamp.com, or you can check out whatever they're up to on their link tree, which is Ken Mode Tour. Once again, thank you, Jesse, and yes, we'll talk again soon. Meanwhile, after checking out Null, come back and tell us what you thought about that album. You can do that on hornsupod.com or on Twitter at hornsupod. I'm on Twitter at Asnoani.
I'm at Trend Crusher.
And this was Horns Up.